Great. So thank you. It's great to be back. Welcome back. We're going to be talking about, apparently, transportation and the sharing economy. A great follow-on to the future of work. You're all in various ways affecting the future of work in significant ways. In fact, Brad McAfee used the comment, the P2P architecture. And certainly a company like Lyft or Postmates is inventing this notion of the P2P architecture. So what I'd like to start with is first by airing a grievance. A sharing economy, Lyft is more than happy to share if we pay, right? Yeah, so hasn't the economy always been like that? Walmart will share stuff with me if I pay them. So anyway, it's a wonderful term, but I think it might be a misnomer. In any case, now that I've got that off my chest, I'd like to open with a question about each of you and your organization. So what's something that you're working on right now? Perhaps we don't know about it, perhaps it's been announced. We want highly confidential information if possible that you're excited about. So why don't we start with Lyft?
Yeah, great. Well, it's great to be here. Casey actually alluded to it in the last panel. So during times of need, we launched this program called Relief Rides. And it started in the wake of Hurricanes Irma. And basically what we do is we provide free rides to shelters and hospitals. And here in Vegas, we provided rides for people donating blood. And really, this is the idea of using our superpower. And during these times of need, transportation is a huge pain point. Our drivers are eager to get out and help the community. In addition, we launched a feature called Roundup and Donate. I don't know how many people here have actually used Roundup and Donate in the app. Okay, so it's not necessarily like so visible in the app. You have to go to the settings and options, but Roundup and Donate allows you to round up your fares. And we have a number of different organizations, and during those times of need, we have Red Cross. So passengers are able to round up and donate their fares during those times of need. And then we partnered with Team Rubicon to help with their transportation needs, veterans who are equipped to go and help out during disaster areas. So for us, we think that that was a great way to have real impact in communities. And I think just the second thing I'm excited about, which just was announced today, was that we signed on to a letter with 115 other executives supporting comprehensive immigration reform. This is an issue, obviously, incredibly important to our founders, but it's great to see so many people from a diverse array of industries standing up now, and it just makes me really proud and excited.
As a citizen, I concur entirely, but I want to go back quickly to Relief Rides and ask you, was this a situation where you're humming along, everything's fine, then the big disaster happens and you guys muster and say, what are we going to do? Or was this something where inside Lyft you were saying, let's come up with something so when something happens?
Yeah,
how did that come together?
Yeah, it happened organically. The first time I remember seeing it was actually at the shooting in Orlando at the nightclub. We had drivers that were just shuttling people back and forth to hospitals. We had drivers that were bringing food to people waiting in line to donate blood. And so we just came out with free rides and geofenced different areas. And then in the wake of these disasters, we realized, hey, there's an opportunity here to actually put real dollars behind the program. So we started off with $100,000, free rides, let's see what happens. And then we started partnering with FEMA, and then the Red Cross got involved. And so it really began with the community and with the drivers who are like at the forefront of everything we do. So
this was percolating. You saw this activity. This sounds like something that would be natural, especially within a peer-to-peer architecture, that you'd be watching the activities of Vikrum. Are you seeing anything like this in Postmates?
Yeah, actually, I think you're getting at something really foundational, which is that not all of these companies, particularly if you're in the early stages of finding a company, is it obvious for you to contribute your product, or as Mike put it, your superpower in that way. And I think it really is a testament to the growth and maturity over time, but it's really a testament to just when you start having that product market fit, and you know that that tool is going to be used for a myriad circumstances, you really have to start examining the data. And for us, something similar that occurred was we noticed that in real big pockets of where we offer delivery and Postmates, you can get food delivered, but you can also get pretty much anything within a community. We started noticing that in particularly food deserts and elder care communities or senior citizen populations where there might be mobility issues, that there was a little bit of a gap and there was a challenge there. And you can start using your network, in our case a network of logistics, to funneling goods in that direction. And so I think this is a little bit of a, to your point, it wasn't that we just were wondering how can we apply this newly in that direction. It was sort of a philosophy that evolved over time but is now core to our ethos. And I think that if we talk about something that we're excited about that piggybacks off of that, is we did, not to steal Lyft's thunder, but we were able to also partner with Lyft during the hurricane season and get goods delivered to evacuation zones in the state of Texas, for example. But something that we're working on that's relatively brand new is that Postmates it's seen as a lazy Sunday burrito delivery company, but we've actually been testing little robotic deliveries and little robotic coolers. And for us, this is not just an attempt to say, hey, let's get into a cool new splashy space. Even on Tuesday this week here at CES, we announced a partnership with Ford to start testing autonomous vehicle delivery in certain markets. Really where this premise comes from is that urban topographies and just city planning and communities and the way commerce is flowing in those communities are changing in real time. And so we want to provide different tools that allow hyper short distance deliveries, longer distance deliveries that account for that. But I will say, to go to each city, to go to the city of San Francisco or the city of Washington, D.C., where there's Secret Service and tons of police forces everywhere, to just plop a little robotic device that's delivering coffee, it's going to create some, raise some eyebrows. So what we really started to do is work with municipalities, try and create these frameworks in which we could legally test these devices in these communities. But what happened was that the biggest layer of concern, meaning that the disabled community, folks, pedestrians walking down sidewalks that were worried how would this device yield to someone in a wheelchair or with a walking stick, that actually created a brand new constituency for us. So now we've been able to start testing these little robotic devices principally to those communities that are in food deserts, that are actually facing mobility issues if they have their own access and mobility issues, and then try and figure out how can you test a new technology on top of our existing superpower to address a brand new community in a meaningful way.
Great. So, Tara, let's talk about Allstate for a second. We've got this peer-to-peer architecture. We've got this stuff percolating all over the place. Even the people right in the middle of it aren't entirely sure what's going to look like next year. How do you manage when your job's all about risk?
Yeah.
And you've been around, it's all about data, 100 years of data, it's all about risk, and everything's changing. What do you do?
Oh my goodness. So what we're doing is we're diversifying. So we have our core business and our mission. When you look at our mission statement, we call it our shared purpose, which is deeply embedded in our culture, it is not about insurance. It's about protecting from life's uncertainties and helping you prepare for the future. So when you think about your business as being the business of helping people think through what are their hopes and dreams and how can you help them achieve them, it opens the aperture of what you could do. So we have our core business. Our core business is probably going to change as personal transportation unfolds. We've done a lot of scenario development on that. In a lot of different scenarios, insurance income goes down. In some of the scenarios, actually, insurance income goes up because if personal transportation gets cheaper, you might go see your mom a little bit more often. You might take more trips than less trips. In that case, you actually probably need more insurance. So there's a lot of different scenarios that could play out with that. But we're also becoming a data and technology company. We have over 1 million cars with devices in them that basically tell you whether you're a good driver. So if you brake hard.
Oh, my wife tells me when I'm a good driver, so I don't need that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now there's a sensor so your wife can help you 24, anytime you're driving your car.
24 hours a day. Yeah, good.
And so we had that in a.
Data-driven.
It's data-driven. It's giving you real core data on if you're braking too hard, if you're turning too hard, if you're driving too fast, and if you're a good driver, you get a discount. If you're not a good driver, you don't. So at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is promote safe driving. We've done it our whole lives. We were the ones on the Hill advocating for airbags. We were the ones advocating for every safety innovation that you've seen in the industry. And now we think we could help you by giving you data directly, by telling you how you drive specifically, so you can decide whether to change your behavior or not. And we've incented you to do that. Now, along with that, it turns out when you have a million devices, when you have cars and you have a million of them that have these devices in it, you have 27 billion road miles worth of data. There's a lot you can do with that data. There's a lot you can do to help consumers with that data. And so we're trying to figure out what are the ways we can bring that to the customer, because we're a middle America company. Yeah. What we care about is your average American household. Median household income in the US is $59,000. We care about that middle, and we want to help them improve their economic outcomes. And we think we have now the data and the technology that's moving in a way where we can help them do it.
So let's build on that. Tara, let's start with you. Give us an example of how you might use these data to help a consumer, a family, live better. Yeah, and then I'll toss that over to Vikram and Mike as well. So
we think that we are on the cusp of a transformation in the personal transportation industry that could be transformative. You have 240 million cars on the road today, $4 trillion of capital is locked up in those cars. $2 billion of direct operating costs, $1 billion in indirect operating costs. If you could fix that by just 20%, that means $3,000 for every household that owns a car. Mm-hmm. And if you can put $3,000 back in the pockets of your median household that has only $59,000 of income a year, that's transformative. That's another 5% of income a year that they can do whatever they want with. So we want to start that journey. The challenge is we think that the focus has been too much on the technology and not enough about the transition. How do we, it's sexy, right? It's sexy to put out the autonomous vehicles, and we support that. It's going to be a safer environment for everybody. But that's going to take a long time. People own cars for 11 years on average. They're not going to do that, recapitalize. People at $60,000 a year in income are not going to buy a new car all that quickly, even if the autonomous technology can move out in the next year, which of course we all heard this week is not going to happen. So we want to start that journey and start that conversation with a lot of people in our industry and across the transportation ecosystem to say, how can we start delivering economic results today? Right. And what are the ways we can do that? And there's lots of ways you could do. You could sell insurance by the mile. You can help people be safer drivers, so you have fewer fatalities on the road, so the cost of insurance goes down for everyone. There's lots of things, and we want to start that now rather than wait for the self-driving cars that are going to come whenever they come.
Vikram, it looked like you were ready to say something.
Yeah, it's interesting because so much of what's on display right now is that transportation is fundamentally changing. Another facet of that is that commerce and the way commerce moves in cities is changing. But it's actually coming at a bit of a price. If you take a look at the numbers in the jobs report that the White House and the Department of Labor released last week, it showed right on the heels of the holidays and Christmas shopping, retail sales in your and my communities actually went down. Normally you tend to see a spike in those job numbers. And that's a really, really big challenge for brick and mortar merchants in your backyard and mine. And so one of the more interesting things that we've been noticing at Postmates is that there are always going to be these very convenient platform companies that you or I may use. Not to paint a target on anyone's back, but an Amazon.com, a Walmart.com, even a Google Fresh, they will provide wholesale items directly to your doorstep. Very convenient. But what they do is build warehouses on the outskirts of cities and then funnel those goods into town. What we're doing is sort of the inverse philosophy, which is index all of the product offerings within a community and treat the city as a warehouse, and then give local brick and mortar retailers, a corner store, a mom and pop bakery, a local hardware store, the tools they need to distribute their goods to you or I. And we've actually noticed that if you take a look at the past few years, that local retailers in a community, say hypothetically like where Mike and I are from, San Francisco, retail has gotten down 35% for that city entirely, but for Postmates partners that have been on the platform that are all of a sudden now reaching new customers in geographies of town they never reached before, sales actually went up 3.7 or 4 times overall. So I think that the more exciting thing is not only is transportation changing and commerce is changing the way we get goods, but how can you actually leverage that, to use our superpower, and make sure that you're leveraging it back into the needs of the community. I think Small Business Saturdays doesn't need to just be the Saturday after Thanksgiving. I think we can buy local more regularly with some of these platform-based technologies.
Yeah, all the things that your companies are doing actually change the relative value of assets in the economy. What can I do with that brick and mortar space if I'm committed to still having it? Could I have other people's goods delivered here and make some money or some data, for instance, not just my own goods? And we're starting to see that with buy online, pick up in any store, right? Mike?
Yeah, I mean, look, while autonomous isn't going to be here next year, I think for us, the data is really about how do we work with a city to reimagine what the city is going to look like for autonomous. So right now, 20% of our rides in a place like San Francisco are first and last mile rides, right? People going to Caltrain or the BART. Well, those areas right now are like parking lots, right? In the future, we believe that that can be a place of commerce, right? There's all these other sort of interesting things that can be done, right? Like our co-founder, John Zimmer, has this idea, parks, not parking lots, right? And as cities are starting to plan, like the cycle can't just be about planning for next year or 2 years. It has to be, right, thinking 20 years ahead, because cities are going to be dramatically different when we have autonomous vehicles on the road. And so that's one. I think the second is that working with these transit agencies to understand where they're actually building infrastructure, because there's certain routes right now that are inefficient, like bus routes, where instead we're testing something called the shuttle, which is a sort of Lyft route that picks people up on a set area. So instead of Lyft line where you're picking up people sort of going along the same route, this is just one set route. And you can imagine a world in autonomous where instead of a city investing heavily in infrastructure, you could actually have Lyft help supplement those rides.
Great. So I want to go a different direction. You're all experts in your particular fields, as much as we can be experts when the world changes so quickly. So I always like to ask people who are in the middle of it, what's something that surprised you that you've seen the last year or two? What was it? Why did it surprise you? And more important, what can we learn from it? Who'd like to start? Vikram?
Sure, I'll take it. I think one of the more, you probably have heard a lot about this either today or just throughout this conference, which is that a lot of these new technologies, whether you're a data technology company or transportation as a service company or a logistics company, are carving out new space of how workers work. In my world, there's a phrase du jour that a lot of policymakers like to say, which is, what is the future of work going to look like if so many people are picking up these little short-term gigs to earn an income to put food on the table? And I believe by some estimates, including Intuit, the tax filing system, 34% of all tax filings in the US in 2016 went to independents, so freelancers, not just inclusive of a Postmates driver or a Lyft driver, even a plumber or a small business owner or entrepreneur, but that means something really intense for the overall social safety net. That means that the way we're getting benefits from a traditional employment model is not working in the same way. It means that you're not paying into a social security apparatus at the same rate that maybe traditional employment offers. And so a lot of those questions are foundational, but as you said, you gotta think into the out years. So even if our focus as a still growing company is on growing markets, expanding into new territory, it's really important for us as industry to start working with policymakers and lawmakers to start thinking through these issues. Should we be investing in our own fleet of drivers to give them access to new jobs or new opportunities? Should we be informing them and sharing the data so that way they have a real clear-eyed view of what the gig economy looks like and they're not making regulations or presuming regulations in the dark? And what surprised me the most is that when you enter this space, it's very easy for the private sector and industry to view government with a skeptical eye, and conversely, for right now, particularly for government to view technology with a skeptical eye. But when you get folks in a room and you have lawmakers and tech companies coming together, you can actually make some very meaningful inroads. If for nothing else, if there's not a new law on the books tomorrow, an earnest dialogue that starts creating a more of a two-way understanding. Yeah. And I think we need more empathy between government and technology if we're really going to chart the course for the future.
So I want to pick on this notion of empathy and planning for the future and sharing data. So I use Lyft, and there's another company that starts with a U. Anyway, some other company. And I sometimes engage in conversations with the drivers, and it struck me that there's a segment of your drivers who they're in it. and they know it, and they can say, well, at 5 a.m., I always make sure I'm positioned right there next to because there's always, and they're planning their business, they're thinking about what's next, and then there are the people who are, I'm filling the gaps, and that's fine. But the people who are really serious and interested in those data and interested in Postmates plans or Lyft's plans, what happens when autonomous vehicles do start to become real? What's our responsibility? How do we help them? We had over 200,000 taxi and limo drivers last year, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Sometime in the next 25 years, they'll all be out of a job. So what's our responsibility to help make that transition?
Yeah.
And I'm not just picking on you, I mean all of us.
No, and all of us have a responsibility with that. As technology takes away parts of people's jobs, takes away all of jobs. If you think about men today, more men drive for income than any other profession in the world.
Really?
Yes. So as we move to an autonomous world, you have to think about all the families that are dependent upon that income. We've gone through this with something that we did just recently. So we've created something that our customers love, which allows you, if you have a problem with your car, you have an accident or something, and it's drivable, you send us pictures, and with those pictures, we can process your claim. What used to happen is we had to have a claim adjuster come to your house, or you would bring the car to a drive-in. It took you days. It just took a long time for you to get money in your bank to decide what you want to do with your car. Now we can do that. Quite frankly, sometimes have money in people's bank accounts in hours. But what did that mean? We had a lot of claims adjusters who were basically averaging 4 claims a day, and they were spending a lot of time behind the wheel, driving from place to place. We don't need that as much anymore. We now can process 24 per person per day. And we had to go through a real soul searching as a company as we were thinking about how do we help these displaced workers think through. So we basically stopped any external hiring at the company, and we opened up every new job to that population that was being affected. We did that for several months. And then we also helped with worker retraining. One of the opportunities that we have with, and I don't want to get political and into tax reform, but one of the opportunities that we
already
have.
talked about immigration reform, so let's go
all right.
for it.
Well, so one of the opportunities is to reinvest, right? Reinvest in your employees and help them figure out how they're going to direct their professional path. Some of it's on us to say, here are the jobs of the future. We had one claims adjuster that told us, had he known about this, he probably would have studied cybersecurity. We had 120 openings for cybersecurity experts the day he said that. If we had done a better job communicating about what our future needs were as a company, we could have helped get him to that place so he had the right skills that he needed to stay employed with us and to provide a service where our company is going. So we all have an obligation to really work on that.
There are a few more intellectually capable people than, say, actuaries. That is a really hard job. It takes multiple years to become an actuary. AI seems like a threat, but if we have the time and the runway and the information, then people who have been doing that, maybe there's a shot that they can find lots of other great things to do in the meanwhile.
Absolutely, they're talented, and we want to keep the people. We want to keep people who have dedicated. We have a great culture. We like the people, and we want to figure out what's the right way where they stay with us, and we all go through this transition in our industry together.
Great. Mike?
Yeah, so I think a few things. First off, we absolutely have a responsibility to lead, I think, in a socially conscious manner. And for us, that means also being transparent with our drivers. We've come out and said publicly that in the next 2 years, we think a majority of Lyft rides are going to be on autonomous vehicles. That being said, we're also just like in the very beginning of this whole story. Only 5% of all vehicle miles traveled in the entire US is on Lyft and Uber right now. So we think that number is going to go dramatically up, and that means that we're going to need a lot more drivers, especially in places like the rural communities where we're just starting to launch. In addition, that means that we need to be creative around thinking about portable benefits. So, Postmates and others of those companies have all come together with academics, with people from both sides of the aisle, and try to think about what does portable benefits look like. For us, that also means thinking about partnerships, like with an entity called Honest Dollar, which is retirement and savings plans for our drivers. And we just announced a partnership in December with an entity called Guild. And what I love about the partnership with Guild is that Guild provides resources to 180 nonprofit universities across the country to help our drivers get anything from a GED to English as a second language, to all different college courses, to master's courses, to vocational skills training. For us, that is absolutely critical because we recognize that while you were saying there are some drivers that are like in it, a lot of these drivers also are just in between things, and we want to be able to help them get to their goals in whatever way we can.
Great, so we're coming down to the end, and this has to be fast. I want it in 3 words or less. Hyphens are appropriate. 3 words or less. No talking about it, just make the English or whatever language you prefer to share. What inspires you? This whole segment is about inspiring the future and all that. What inspires you? Tara?
Intersection of health and technology.
Intersection of, that's close enough.
Sorry.
Good, neat.
The era of the CEO statesman or stateswoman.
The era of the CEO statesperson.
Statesperson.
Okay, good. I like that. Mike?
I'd say taking a stand, especially when it's not popular.
That's a good one.
Taking a stand. What's the CEO statesperson? What is that?
It's not too far. I don't want to put words in Mike's mouth, but from maybe what you're getting at. It's now you have, regardless of your politics or who's in office, you have more and more executives of companies that are signing letters on DACA, that are speaking out on climate change, or you had Tim Cook famously go toe-to-toe with the FBI when it came to unlocking iPhones and talking about data and encryption. And I think that companies are recognizing not only do they want to showcase their values as a signal to their customers, but they want to showcase their values where a product touches a space of society and they can use their bully pulpit and use their superpower to advance some conversation in a good way.
Yeah, we talked about this in our table, just like Patagonia was a great example.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So the P2P architecture is upon us, and the people on the stage are in the midst of it. Things are percolating up, and no one, not even the people here, can predict exactly where we'll be in 6 months, much less 6 years. There's an open sector rising. My good friend John Clippinger at MIT Media Lab refers to private sector, public sector, and open sector. A disaggregation of corporations, a disaggregation of industries, and each one of the companies up here has superpowers. And the superpowers are being leveraged across these platforms in often unexpected ways. I learned that Postmates is more than just a burrito delivery company. That's good to hear because that's a pretty small market, I would guess. That's exciting. And Vikram, you used the word foundational twice. I think you're right. I think what's going on is truly a foundational transformation in our economy. The sharing data, the platforms, the services, not just for the consumers, but also for the drivers, for their families, as you mentioned, Tara. Layers of the infrastructure are changing, so you're on the service layer with these networks of people. You're underneath trying to support the risk and enable people to safely achieve what they're doing. This is all related to something I call proximity. Technology, all of the technologies we're seeing, all of these trends together are driving the production and provision of products and services ever closer to the moment at which things might be demanded. And this is happening across all industries. When you realize that, you can gain extraordinary foresight to where we're going. Finally, I asked the inspiration question because what do we do this for anyway, if not to find inspiration and enable ourselves and others to achieve it? When you were describing the CEO on the platform, you mentioned bully pulpit. I already had made a note that really this is about inspiring all of us to be in the arena. Another quote from our friend, President Roosevelt. Thanks so much to our panelists and to SIS.
Thank you.